Message is going to resonate.
And joining us now from Oklahoma City, Deputy Whip for the Republican Conference, Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma. Congressman, always good to have you here. Just pick up on what Vin Weber was.
With you guys.
Thank you. What Vin Weber was saying to Mark Halpern yesterday on their show. He basically said, and it's a quote, that this would be a mistake of historic proportions to elect Donald Trump president. Vin Weber, very respected guy, one of the elder statesmen of the Republican Party. Is he right about that?
No, I don't think he is, and he is a guy I do know and do like and do admire. But quite frankly, elections are about choices, and you have to look at what the alternative is. And the alternative is a candidate who, frankly, was given a position of great trust as Secretary of State for personal and political convenience, put the security of the country at risk. An eyelash of being indicted, presided over a series of foreign policy disasters, and has continued to be dishonest. I mean, it's somebody that on Sunday gets 4 Pinocchios for telling us what she thinks the FBI director said. So, look, I think given those choices, it's pretty easy for me to say I'm not going to vote for Hillary.
Does it give you pause at all, Congressman, when you hear someone like General Michael Hayden, who ran the CIA for President Bush, or today Mike Morrell, deputy at the CIA, say that we cannot elect this man to be president? These are people who understand what it means to be the commander-in-chief and the power of that position as it relates to foreign policy. Does that give you pause at all to hear from people like that?
They do, well, of course. I mean, these are guys that I know and respect a great deal. Look, they've testified in front of various committees that I've sat on. They're great patriots. They've served their country well. But again, the alternative is somebody that literally looks you in the eye and doesn't tell you the truth, and has continued to do that. It's not just, well, I made a mistake. That's fine. But then she continues to tell you that she did things she didn't do, that this was approved by professionals at the department.
But for a second
look,
there,
I think you have to look on both sides. If I can finish my point, I think you have to look at both sides here, and I just don't find Secretary Clinton an acceptable alternative.
A safer bet, though, maybe.
I don't think so. Again, I'd rather have somebody that I disagree with some of the things they said than somebody that won't tell me what they believe or tell me what the truth is. That's a very sobering thing. And I think that's where we've been in this campaign, where the Secretary is concerned.
So what are some of the things that you don't like that Donald Trump has said?
I disagreed with him very vehemently about the Muslim ban, and frankly, he's backed off that and come back to basically, we're not going to allow people in the country from terrorist and controlled areas that we can't appropriately vet. That's a perfectly reasonable position. That's not his original position.
Congressman,
so there's, look, I've never had a candidate that I didn't disagree with on something.
Congressman, how about Mr. Trump's take on sacrifice? Obviously, we watched what happened with the Khans. They gave the ultimate sacrifice. When asked what a comparable sacrifice in his life was, he says building buildings. Are you okay with the statement like that?
I agree with you on that. Look, there's no comparable sacrifice to a family that's lost a son in combat defending this country. And particularly for a Muslim family in this particular kind of conflict, it's an act of extraordinary heroism. So there's no question that that was a misstatement and a mistake. Should have never been said and is not acceptable.
How do you think...
But I also think it's pretty unacceptable to tell, I'm going to put thousands of coal miners out of work. I mean, again, both candidates have put their foot in their mouth several times along the way.
And excuse me, sir, but when Hillary Clinton put her foot in the mouth, she went back there and addressed people and clarified what she said and owned up to it. Now, tell me one time, except for a tweet, that Donald Trump has owned up to any of the crazy things he has said, and I don't exactly know how you could be comfortable with this candidate. I can't understand it, but I'm going to continue to ask. Now tell me, if you could, are you comfortable with how he's treating Paul Ryan, Kelly Ayotte, and other Republican leaders who apparently desperately need his endorsement or some sort of deal to be made? Are you comfortable with how he's working with them?
First of all, with all due respect, Mika, I don't think they desperately need his endorsement. These are people that have won on their own in their respective states and districts, and I think you'll see that on Tuesday when I expect Speaker Ryan will win pretty handily in his race. Now, if I were advising a candidate, and I used to do that for a living, the first thing I'd tell them is don't put yourself in the middle of other people's races. Look, I don't think Mr. Trump ought to be in anybody's primary. I don't have any problem that he doesn't, quote, endorse. I would just say, why bring it up at all? You should be talking about Hillary Clinton. You should be talking about security of the country. You should be talking about a one 2% economic growth rate. And so focus on that. If you want to unify Republicans, go after Hillary Clinton. You'll get them all pretty quickly that way. So I think this has been a week of missteps. There's no doubt about that. But do I think that it's irretrievable? No, I don't.
What if you find that these missteps continue and that he does not talk about the things that you want to hear from and perhaps doesn't have the capacity to? Because that's a legitimate question at this point.
I doubt that he doesn't have the capacity to. Look, he went into his convention behind, and regardless of all the criticism, he came out of it ahead. So he had a pretty normal convention. He's been pretty successful in a lot of primaries. And there's no question he's reached parts of the electorate that Republicans don't traditionally reach. And that, that's a serious contribution. So let's see how it goes. Now, the problem here is, and this is something that Vin addressed, you really do have a first-time candidate. It's like if you were a professional fighter, your first fight was for the heavyweight championship of the world. That's not what most people do. And so I'm not surprised that you see, missteps along the way. The question is, how will it go? And I agree with something Mark said earlier. I think the debates will be pretty critical in this.
Michael Steele?
Congressman Cole, Michael Steele here. How you doing, buddy? How is...
I should say chairman, actually.
Yeah, that's all good. How is Speaker Ryan right now navigating this fine thread between Donald Trump and the tensions that seem to be around this campaign and the caucus as a whole? How do you see that playing out going into the fall and with the members inside the House and in the Senate, for that matter?
Well, I think the Speaker's done very well. Frankly, when he's disagreed, he said so, and he's been respectful, but he's endorsed the nominee, accepted the verdict of his voters, and I think he's tried to protect his members in this process. And I think one of the things that, as I look at the numbers, I don't think Clinton has much in the way of coattails. I've never seen anybody that had a 37-53 fave-unfave pull other people into office. So I think the presidential race is going on between two candidates. I think what happens down ballot, particularly at the granular level of congressional districts, is likely to be determined by what individual members do, not likely to be affected too much by what goes on at the presidential level. I think Paul's aware of that, and I think he's put us in that position. He's also put together a pretty aggressive platform for us to run on, things that are separate, that are our own agenda. With all due respect, no presidential candidate created this majority. It was created by individual members of the House and the Republican Party. I think it can sustain itself through tough elections, just as it did in 2012.
Congressman, in both 1990 and 1996, you'll recall that the wings of your party trying to reelect House and Senate Republicans distance themselves from the top of the ticket. Could you imagine a scenario this year where you guys decide you're better off distancing yourself from Donald Trump in order to keep your majority?
Well, I think it's a little early to make that call. I think the right thing to do always, for any candidate, is just run your race within your district. And most candidates have a pretty good idea of what they need to do and say, given what the electorate is. And if they've been successful in the past, it's because they broadly reflect what those people believe. So I leave that to them. Now, in terms of what we do at the top of the ticket, again, I think, as I said, I think that's a thing in and of itself. I don't think it's likely to have the down ballot implications that people think, for good or ill.
Congressman, of all the people we have on from Washington, you've always seemed to be among the most grounded.
Absolutely.
And here you are.
That's because I'm from Oklahoma.
Yeah, well, that's where you are today. And I understand your support for the top of your ticket. There's no argument with your support for the top of your ticket. I get it. That's who you are, and that's where you're coming from. But let me ask you, in listening to Donald Trump, in watching his campaign now for over a year, can you think of one example to give us where Donald Trump seems to understand the concept of human frailty, of vulnerability, of loss, of the human condition? Just one.
Mike, that's a great question. I don't know him well enough to know that. I've never met him. I've been in two with him, in July when he came to address the Republican conference, and I saw him at the convention at a luncheon with several hundred people. So I can't give you that kind of personal insight. And it's unusual because usually by this point, look, if you're running for president, I've known everybody running for president long before they were running, since Ronald Reagan in 1980. So this guy is sort of outside the normal political realm. And in that sense, that's actually part of his appeal. People don't think we're moving in the right direction. They don't think Washington's working very well, and they want to shake it up a lot. Now,